Ugoma tried to explain but couldn't. Bruno tried to hide under the duvet, but Osita had already seen him. "Who is that?" Osita shouted, pointing at the board under the cover. There lived a billionaire woman named Ifeoma and her husband Osita. Ifeoma owned many businesses and estates. She became very rich and powerful after investing in a business that changed her life and status from being poor to becoming rich. She promised herself that she would help people with her wealth. She was well known in her village because of her kindness and love. She built houses for the poor and helped widows less privileged. Meanwhile, Ifeoma and her husband Osita lived in the city of Lagos. Osita was also known for his kind and gentle heart. He loved Ifeoma very much and would do anything to make her happy. Osita was always with his wife Ifeoma. He would always praise her in front of his business partners and friends. He would brag that if not for her intelligence and contributions, he wouldn't have achieved all the wealth he had. They had two children, twins named Afam and Ekene. Both twins helped manage their mother's company and did so happily without any complaint. They were always seen together looking happy. They loved each other very much, and this made the family strong and united. A few years later, Afam and Ekene got married, and that was when the whole problem in the family started. Afam's wife, Nneka, and Ekene's wife, Amara, disliked each other intensely. They constantly brought up issues that caused their husbands to quarrel. At first, the disagreements were minor. Nneka and Amara would argue over small matters, like how the family gatherings should be organized or how certain traditions should be upheld. But soon the tension escalated. The once happy family dinners turned into battlegrounds, with Afam and Ekene often taking sides with their wives, leading to heated arguments. One evening, Osita and Ifeoma sat in their living room, deeply worried. "What is happening to our family?" Ifeoma asked, her voice filled with sorrow. "We were so united." Osita sighed, "I don't know, my dear, but we need to find a way to bring peace back to our home." Meanwhile, Nneka and Amara were plotting in their own ways. Nneka, feeling threatened by Amara's influence, decided to use subtle manipulation to turn her husband Afam. She would often whisper in Afam's ear about how Ekene, his brother, and his wife Amara were trying to take over the family business, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. Amara, on the other hand, was no less cunning. She began to plant ideas in Ekene's mind that Afam and Nneka were wasting the family's wealth and making poor business decisions. The brothers, once inseparable, began to see each other as rivals rather than partners. One night, the tension reached a breaking point. The family had gathered for dinner, and the atmosphere was thick with unspoken animosity. Suddenly, Nneka accused Amara of stealing money from the family business. Amara, outraged, fires back, accusing Nneka of trying to sabotage her and Ekene's success. Afam and Ekene jumped to defend their wives, and a fierce argument erupted. Voices were raised and harsh words were exchanged. Osita and Ifeoma watched in despair as their family seemed to be falling apart before their eyes. As they were arguing, Maazi Okeke, who had come from the village for a visit, entered the house and was surprised to hear them arguing. In the midst of the chaos, Osita stood up and banged his fist on the table. "Enough!" he shouted. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. "This is not how our family behaves. We are better than this," he said with a gentle voice. Ifoma added, "We need to remember the love and unity that brought us together. This fighting is tearing us apart. We need to find a way to resolve our differences peacefully," she said. The next day, Maazi Okeke told Osita that the reason why he came to his house was because he needed more money for his business. Osita was shocked as he had just given him some money last week. He wondered if Maazi Okeke was being greedy. Osita refused to give him the money. This made Maazi Okeke angry. As Osita left for work, Maazi Okeke made a call to set his plan in motion. He called Mr. Linus and told him about his plans. He also told him that he planned on staying in Osita's house until he gets what he wants from Osita. Mr. Linus was Osita's closest friend, but he was jealous of Osita because of his wealth. Mr. Linus listened carefully to Maazi Okeke's plan and agreed to help. They decided to use Ugomma, known for her beauty and charm. They planned to introduce Ugomma to Osita, hoping she could seduce him and create a scandal that would damage his reputation. They agreed to carry out the plan in 2 weeks, but they wanted Ugomma to meet Osita for now. Mr. Linus introduced Ugomma to Osita and deceived him by saying that he couldn't be married to only Ifeoma and that he needed to test other women to forget about his problems, that he can't be eating only egusi soup. He should also taste some ogbono soup, he said jokingly. When Osita saw Ugomma, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Mr. Linus excused himself and left them alone. As they were talking, Osita's phone kept ringing. Ugomma overheard the large sums of money Osita was discussing on phone, and an idea came to her and she smiled to herself. After the night they spent together, Osita and Ugomma started a relationship and she became his side chick. Few days later, Osita became more and more infatuated with Ugomma. She knew exactly how to keep him hooked. Flattery, charm, and the promise of excitement. Ifeoma, Osita's wife, began to notice the change in Osita. He was more distant and spent less time at home. She felt something was wrong but couldn't put her finger on it. One evening, Ugomma and Mr. Linus met secretly to discuss their plan. "He's completely under your spell," Mr. Linus said. "Now we need to move to the next phase. We need to get access to his business account," he said. Ugomma nodded. "Leave it to me. Let's give him some more time," she said. The next day, Ugomma visited Osita at his office. She had prepared a sob story about a fake business venture that she needed urgent funding. With tears in her eyes, she told Osita that she needed a large sum of money to save her business and that she had no one else to turn to. Blinded by his feelings for her, Osita agreed without hesitation. Ugomma quickly moved to his side as she watched Osita open a suitcase filled with money and handed her some. She carefully observed and memorized his password, which was part of a larger scheme to drain his finances. Meanwhile, Ugomma had a boyfriend named Bruno, whom she loved very much. Bruno was aware of what Ugomma was doing She told him how Mr. Linus had paid her to seduce Osita and how she planned to turn the tables to get what she wanted. Osita is so naive, Ugoma said. He trusts me completely. We can take him for everything he's got, she said. Bruno grinned. Just be careful, my dear. We need to play this right. Over the next few weeks, Ugoma continued manipulating Osita, asking for more and more money for her fake business ventures. Osita, still blinded by his feelings for her and the stress from his family problems, continued to give her what she asked for. One day, Osita visited his friend Mr. Linus and told him that he was feeling guilty about cheating on his wife Ifeoma. Told him how Ifeoma had been there for him when he had nothing. But Mr. Linus advised him that all men cheat on their wives and that he was not the first person. As they were talking, Linus excused himself and went outside to call Ugoma, Osita's side chick, to come over, as it seems Osita was having doubts about his relationship with her. Ugoma quickly dressed and rushed to see Osita. When Ugoma entered the room, her smile lightened up the space, and as soon as Osita saw her, all his guilt about cheating on his wife disappeared. He was mesmerized by Ugoma's beauty. I will buy a new car for my wife Ifeoma to compensate her, he said to himself. They spent the evening together, laughing and talking. Ugoma skillfully kept Osita's mind off his guilt, making him feel special and important. Meanwhile, Ifeoma, growing more suspicious of Osita's behavior, decided to confront him. She had noticed the late night and secretive phone calls. She knew something was wrong. One evening, when Osita came home late, Ifeoma was waiting for him. Osita, we need to talk, she said. I know something is going on. Please, just tell me the truth. Osita, caught off guard, hesitated. He could see the pain in Ifeoma's eyes, but he couldn't bring himself to admit his affair with Ugoma. Just be honest with me, she said. At that moment, Osita's phone buzzed. It was a message from Ugoma asking when he could see her again. Osita quickly grabbed the phone and reassured Ifeoma, saying, nothing is going on. I love you very much, and no other woman could ever take your place. He then walked out of the bedroom, and as he opened the door, he bumped into Mazi Okeke, who had been standing close by, listening to their conversation. Mazi Okeke smiled and whispered to Osita, don't pay attention to your wife, he said. 2 days later, Ifeoma was unable to shake off her suspicions. She then decided to take action. She hired a private investigator named Mr. Kanayo to trace her husband and uncover the truth. She needed to know what was really going on behind her back. Mr. Kanayo was a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail. He assured Ifeoma that he would discreetly follow Osita and gather all the necessary evidence. Ifeoma felt a mix of anxiety and relief, hoping that her suspicions would be proven wrong. Over the next few days, Mr. Kanayo followed Osita, documenting his movements and interactions. He observed Osita's meeting with Ugoma frequently. Their relationship was clearly more than business. Mr. Kanayo took photos and recorded conversations, ensuring he had solid evidence. Meanwhile, Mazi Okeke and Mr. Linus met with Ugoma and discussed the need to act quickly. After hearing about Osita's conversation with Ifeoma, they asked Ugoma for their share of the money she had collected from Osita so far. Ugoma quickly lied, saying that Osita hadn't given her any money yet and was still deciding whether to invest in her fake business. She promised them that once she gained his full trust, she would get the money and share it with them. Though suspicious, Mr. Linus and Mazi Okeke decided to believe her for now. They agreed to be patient a little. As they left Ugoma's side, she knew she had to act fast. She called Osita, pretending to be in distress. "My landlord threw me out. I'm stranded," she said. Osita, worried, immediately sent her money. "Find a hotel for now. I will fix this." A few days later, Osita surprised Ugoma with a grand mansion. "This is for you," he said, handing her the keys. Ugoma was thrilled. "Thank you so much, Osita," she said. "You deserve the best. I will give you whatever you need," Osita promised. Ugoma told Osita that she wanted to work for him. Osita agreed and employed Ugoma as his personal assistant. A week later, Ugoma conspired with Bruno to steal Osita's money so they could locate overseas and start a new life together. Ugoma tried her best to make Osita leave the office early, but he didn't. Growing impatient, as Bruno was waiting for her so they could carry out their plan, she told the secretary to go home. However, the secretary became suspicious and decided to hide. Ugoma, now frustrated, brought out a drink and made sure Osita got drunk. Once he was intoxicated, she invited Bruno over. Together, they tied Osita up and left him in the toilet before stealing the suitcase containing the money. After they left, the secretary came out of her hiding place and untied Osita, who was still asleep, before leaving. Hours later, Osita woke up with a headache and was surprised to find that Ugoma was no longer with him. He rushed to the mansion to find her. Meanwhile, Ifeoma sat in her office reviewing the latest financial reports. She noticed something alarming. She discovered that the two branches of her business, managed by her sons, Afam and Ekene, were falling. She called a meeting and found out that their wives, Nneka and Amara, had pushed them into making bad business decisions. Ifeoma felt very disappointed, and as she was about to leave the meeting, her phone rang. It was Mr. Kanayo, the private investigator she had hired to trace her husband. "I have some important information. Can we meet?" Mr. Kanayo said. Ifeoma agreed. She left the office, her mind racing with thoughts about the fallen business and her troubled family. When she arrived at the cafe, Mr. Kanayo was already waiting, holding an envelope. "Mrs. Ifeoma, you need to see this." He handed her the envelope. Inside were photos of Osita with Ugoma, looking intimate and happy together. Ifeoma's heart sank. She felt a mix of shock and betrayal. Tears welled up in her eyes as she flipped through the pictures. "After all we've been through, how could he do this to me?" she said. Ifeoma sat in silence, trying to process the betrayal. Her mind flashed back to all the sacrifices she had made and all the support she had given Osita over the years. The pain was overwhelming. She looked up at Mr. Kanayo. "Thank you for your work. I needed to know. Now I need to decide what to do next." She left the cafe, her heart heavy with sorrow. As Ifeoma drove home from the cafe, her mind was clouded with thoughts of her husband's betrayal and her children's mismanagement of the company. She felt a wave of sadness and anger wash over her to concentrate on the road. Suddenly, she missed a red light and collided with another car. The impact was strong, and Ifeoma's car spun out of control before coming to a halt. Bystanders rushed to the scene and rushed her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Ugoma and her boyfriend Bruno were making plans to leave the country She sat on the bed, laughing and discussing their future, imagining a life of luxury far away, when suddenly Osita burst into the room. Surprised and angry, Ugoma tried to explain, but before she could finish, Bruno tried to hide under the duvet, but Osita had already seen him. "Who is that?" Osita shouted, pointing at the board under the covers. Bruno slowly emerged. I I can explain too, he stammered. Both Ugoma and Bruno were left speechless as Osita demanded answers. Suddenly, Osita's phone started to ring. He answered and was told that his wife, Ifeoma, had been in an accident. He quickly rushed to the hospital, leaving Bruno and Ugoma. As soon as Osita left, Ugoma grabbed the suitcase containing the money she had stolen from him. Bruno picked up the suitcase with their clothes. Together, they ran out of the mansion. When Osita reached the hospital, he saw Ifeoma lying in the bed. Guilt washed over him for cheating on her. The next day, Ifeoma was discharged, and as they got home, she showed Osita the pictures of him and Ugoma. He was surprised. "How could you do this to me after everything I've done for you?" she asked, her voice filled with pain. Osita looked at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. "I never want to see you again," Ifeoma said, her voice breaking. Osita pleaded with Ifeoma, but she refused to listen. Feeling devastated, he went to his office and was shocked to find that the suitcase containing his money was missing. He called his secretary, who informed him that Ugoma had left with the suitcase. Osita quickly rushed to the mansion he had bought for Ugoma and discovered that she had moved out. The gateman told him that Ugoma had sold the mansion. Osita couldn't believe his ears and immediately called the police. Police searched for Ugoma but couldn't find her. Finally, they arrested her at the airport, where Bruno had left her stranded. Her boyfriend Bruno had stolen the money and taken an early morning flight out of the country. Ugoma confessed that she was paid by Mr. Linus and Mazi Okeke to steal from Osita. The police later arrested both Mr. Linus and Mazi Okeke. Meanwhile, Ifeoma sat with her children, Afam and Ekene, discussing how they would rebuild the company. Afam and Ekene both vowed that they will never allow anyone, including their wives, to tear them apart again. Osita was seen sitting alone, filled with regret. The moral of the story is trust and loyalty are the foundation of any strong relationship. When these are broken, as seen in Osita's betrayal of Ifeoma, it can lead to the downfall of relationships and the destruction of a once happy family. Greed, as demonstrated by Ugoma, Mr. Linus and Mazi Okeke, ultimately leads to their downfall. Deceiving others for personal gain may offer temporary rewards, but it results in regret, loss and punishment in the end. The story highlights the importance of family unity. When Afam and Ekene allowed their wives' conflicts to divide them, it weakened the family. Families should work together to resolve conflicts peacefully and maintain strong bonds. Thank you.